Hello, everybody. This is Jose Palomino with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. And today we're going to look at something that maybe not all of you have tried, but you've all been on them, and that's webinars and how they might fit. And no less than Omar Zenhom, president and founder of WebinarNinja, a key technology for doing webinars effectively, is our guest today. And he's going to talk about his journey and also some real powerful tips on how to leverage webinars no matter what you're selling. So if you're not selling a knowledge package, but you actually represent a company or you work with a company that makes things, you're a manufacturer, you're doing industrial services, webinars can and still should be part of your marketing mix. So strap in, listen carefully to Omar Zenhom as he joins us from Sydney, Australia, today on the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Well, welcome, Omar, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
It's good to be here, Jose. Sorry, I have a friend of mine who's Brazilian, and they pronounce it.
Oh, yeah, they pronounce it Jose. Exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I still remember for some reason, I was like, I don't know, in second grade, we're trading Valentine's Day cards, and somebody wrote a card for me, very kind, and it didn't upset me. He just didn't know he spelled it H-O-Z-A-Y because that's how he heard it.
Yeah.
So there you go. So anyway, Omar, as we get started, I want for our audiences, because you do quite a number of different things, but just maybe simply the thing you most want to emphasize, or you could tell us, like, who do you serve typically and what do you do for them?
I run a software company called WebinarNinja, and we cater to teachers, trainers, coaches. Primarily, that's our niche. But many of our users and our community members that use WebinarNinja will have physical businesses selling physical products, manufacturing companies, law firms, things like that. So a wide range of companies we serve. But most of my time is spent, with my team building the best software possible.
Wow. So Omar, I think there's a story there, right? So how did you go about starting the business? And I know, we talked a little bit, you're originally from the East Coast, but now you're in Australia. So, that's to me, that's kind of interesting. So I'd like to just maybe hear a little bit about your story and how you came about starting WebinarNinja in the first place.
Yeah. So, if we're going to go way back, my parents are Egyptian. They migrated to the US. So the idea of travel and living in different countries and migrating to different countries is kind of something that's not strange to me. So like something I'm used to. But growing up, my father was in sales. That's what he did. And I don't know if anybody who's listening has a family member in sales. It's very volatile. Like one summer we'll have vacation at Disney World, the next time it's in the backyard. So growing up in that environment, I wanted something a little bit more stable. I felt like I want something that, is just a little bit more predictable revenue. And I didn't want to be a doctor, or I didn't want to go to the military, but I decided I was going to go into teaching. So I went into teaching, and my first career is in education. I was a high school and university teacher. I taught English as a second language. My last 6 years in that industry, in that job, I was head of department. I was, training teachers, managing teachers in my department. That was my career. But while I was in that career, around 2001 is when I started my first business online. And I wouldn't even call it a business at the time. It was just an experiment. I was just trying to figure out what is possible on the internet. And everything I've learned along the way was pretty much just through trial and error and just self-taught. I self-taught myself how to design a website. I taught myself how to write copy. I taught myself how to sell, just reading books. We didn't have as many resources as we do have today back then. But I had the comfort of having a full-time job and the safety net of like, I can fail and I can crash and burn my business, and that's fine. I can close my door, start another one. So I have that to be thankful for. But about in 2012, I decided to take that leap and leave my career in education and become a full-time entrepreneur. I started a program called the $100 MBA, which is basically what it sounds like. It's the $100 MBA education. I felt many people are probably in the same place I was, where you feel like you want to start a business, but you don't have the education, the finance, the sales, the
Mhm.
marketing education that you need. You don't necessarily want to go to business school and spend $100,000. And you just kind of just need the skills to get started. So I started this program. I started a podcast of the same name, still going strong today. But when I was running this program, I wanted a way to scale my business and be able to basically uh, build trust with my audience, build relationships, so that way I can invite them to become a member of the $100 MBA. And I started doing webinars, and I ran a lot of webinars, ran like a couple webinars a week. I just didn't love the solutions that were available at the time. As a former educator and teacher, I felt like they were very clunky. They got in the way. They really didn't put the teaching and the learning first. They
Mm.
put the technology first. They kind of like started the technology, and then eventually it trickled down to, okay, you could do this with the technology, rather than, hey, what does the customer need? The customer needs a way to teach easily, and the technology kind of fade in the background, so you're not overwhelmed. So I decided to come up with a solution for myself. Just for myself, literally, I wanted to build a software just so I can use it to run my webinars. And when I started to do that, my attendees on that webinar were asking, what are you using for this webinar? It looks pretty cool. And I was just like, something I slapped together, and they're like, well, can we buy it? So that was kind of the birth of Webinar Ninja, where we basically pre-sold Webinar Ninja before we even sold it to people, and it allowed us to see if there's interest in the market. You know, we sold 250 beta spots in about a week, and from there we were like, okay, we hit the ground running, started to hire a developer and try to clean this up. Of course, the first version wasn't perfect, but those first beta members really helped us a lot, inform the product and all that. So it was really a great journey, and we went from 250 beta users to today we have over 15,000 users. So it's been an incredible journey. One of the things I love about my business is that it forces me to become a better entrepreneur because of all the challenges. There's not a day that goes by that is exactly like yesterday. It's something new every day.
Well, that's you described like in a microcosm of the entrepreneurial journey, right? So, when when you were discussing how you start having people ask you about your product or your platform, I'm just curious, was it like the third person that asked you, or was it like the 30th person that asked you that triggered that light bulb moment and say, whoa, maybe I got something here in the thing, not necessarily what I'm using it for, but the platform itself? I mean, how long did it take for that trigger, or was it really like really quick that people quickly were responding to what you had put together?
That's a good question. So on the webinar, I would say about 10 or 12 people were interested when I was running webinars with it. Like, oh, this is interesting. I would love to learn more.
Okay.
Um, I'm a big believer that we are the worst people to ask as business owners. We are the worst people to ask ourselves if this is a good idea, if this is a viable business. Often we are more likely to be wrong than right. So
Mm.
what I like to encourage myself and others is let the market decide. Don't let yourself decide, because you can't be your only customer. You need, lots of customers to be a viable business. So what I decided is I just put together a landing page with the promise of what the product will do, some mock-ups, something that took me maybe a couple weekends to put together. And then I emailed everybody I knew, literally emailed every single person in my phone, person I met at a conference. And I would say, hey, if you or somebody else you think would be interested in this, you could share this with them on social or share via email, let them know. And I basically had a small little call to action that says, if you're interested in this, you can put a deposit for $150 to secure a spot. And it was important for me to actually charge and not
Mm.
say sign up if you're interested, because that's very easy to say yes to. But
Right.
when somebody has to part with their money, it really means I need a solution to this problem. And if you can offer me a solution, if there's a chance you can offer me a solution, people that have a really big pain point, really strong pain point, they're willing to try 2, 3, 5, 10 things to solve this
Absolutely.
problem when they're in pain. So that's really what I was trying to figure out. And I just allow the market to tell me if this is a good idea or not. And at the time, I didn't know that people would say yes to this. But I decided, instead of me thinking this is a great idea or a horrible idea, let others decide.
Right, and I love the fact that you did, and I've often heard even people talk about, and I teach a course on entrepreneurial marketing, and I've had students tell me that they're in companies that do MVPs almost on a free trial basis. And I said, well, that's not an MVP because you haven't proven anything. You don't know. I mean, it's only when people actually open their wallet do you know, is there really a there? Because a lot of things might seem, oh yeah, why not? It's interesting, but it doesn't mean they're ever going to do anything with it. But once they put some money into it, that means there's real interest. And you also chose a number that wasn't onerous. It was a reasonable number if they had a real problem. And it didn't feel like you were taking advantage of them. So that's fantastic. I love that story, Omar. And so now here we are, right? So the world is obviously has been all Zoomified, right? So everybody's on Zoom now. And pretty amazing that they stood up for the planet, this platform, pretty much overnight, when people were having like birthday parties and people would never be on Zoom. And even my business has almost completely gone into like, video delivery mostly via Zoom. And of course, prior to Zoom, there was, WebEx and GoToMeeting and all these some of those very clunky. I've used them all. They are very clunky, and you almost feel
Skype.
It's very.
Remember Skype?
Oh yeah, Skype. Yeah, it's very, very stressful to use those things in real time if you're a presenter and you don't have like a whole staff behind you. Like it's almost like they designed it for the old, like you were a broadcast booth with a whole team working for you at the same time.
Yeah.
But yet in that world, here you are with WebinarNinja. And somebody might look at your business or talk to you and say, you know what? How in the world are you going to compete against these multi-billion-dollar giants?
Yeah.
And yet here you are. So how do you compete against these multi-billion-dollar giants?
That's a good question. I don't compete with them. They're not my competition because people that come to us, they are not trying us out. They're not kind of playing with the idea of running online courses or doing workshops. They've tried it the other way, which is I'm going to hodgepodge everything together. I'm going to use 5 different pieces of technology: email marketing, Zoom, landing pages, email reminders, add to calendar features. I have to recording this and hosting the video somewhere for the replay and offering access. They try to do it, and it's just too much work to just put this in Frankenstein it all together. So people that come to us have already kind of gone through the pain of trying to do this. So we don't cater to people that run Zoom meetings like what we're doing right now, because we're not a meeting software. We're really a teaching platform. Just like, I would not go and say, people that speak on stage is the same thing as people speaking in a classroom. A classroom setting is different than somebody giving a keynote. So for us, people that come to us are looking to have a one-stop shop place to organize all their live and recorded workshops. Really, is being able to teach and present and make offers and do polls and have a lot more interactivity than they normally would with a meeting software. And Zoom will just never be able to niche down like that because they want to cater to a wider market.
Sure.
So this is kind of my advice. If anybody's in a market that's kind of crowded, the best thing to do is for you to really niche down as much as possible, because then you're going to solve a particular pain point to a particular audience. And the world is large. It's not a zero-sum game. You can definitely have a very successful 7, 8, 9-figure business by catering to just authors, for example, or just yoga teachers. So that's kind of what we did, and it didn't start out like that. In the beginning, we were just like trying to be the best webinar software. About 4 years ago, we decided to just really niche down to just cater to coaches, teachers, trainers. And it doesn't mean that we don't get other people, like I mentioned before, using our software. It just means that we really resonate strongly with those that we do that. And the reason why we niche down in that niche, why do I choose that niche, is because just that's my area of expertise. That's where I came from in my teaching background. So I understand how to serve these people. These are my people. So that's kind of my answer to that. But Zoom has its place, and it's a very valuable piece of software for the world in terms of technology. But it doesn't fit every need.
Right. And I love what you said about you don't compete with these big giants, right? Because you did zero in on, I've often, when I've taught that principle, I talk about an archery target, right? It has concentric circles, and the bullseye is where you get the most points. and that's what you're aiming for. But you still get points if you hit one of the concentric circles, as long as you don't miss the board entirely. So you're going to
Right.
get people, I'm sure, in your business that are going to come to you and say, "Wow, I never would have thought they would have wanted to use this, but hey, why not?" You know what I mean? So, but that's not your target, your aim, your messaging, and so on. And I also love the fact that, Omar, you reflected on your personal passion, the things you know, the things you're good at, the things you have experience with. So that really makes you align with your target audience in a real powerful way because they know you know. It's not academic for you, no pun intended, but it's
Mhm.
actually you they can feel it, I'm sure, in the way you put the product together, the features and things like that as well. So one thing I wanted to just touch on with you, just because some listeners here may not actually be people who've done webinars before, they've attended them before. And there's some sense of like, wow, there's so many webinars out there. Are webinars still a viable way to reach a marketplace? Or is it just so saturated that like we got to come up with something new?
That's a very good question because this is like saying, you know, like a movie producer saying, I'm not going to come up with any movies anymore because there's so many movies out there. Movies have been around forever. What we're doing with webinars is we're just building relationships. It's just another form of building relationships and building trust with your audience. It's a way for them to have a test drive of your product, of your experience of working with you. It's far faster and more efficient for me to be able to have a 1 minute, a 1 hour webinar, giving somebody some information, good value, answering their questions, making them understand that there's a face behind this company, even if you're not doing the webinars yourself as the founder of the company, but there is a representative of the company that is saying, hey, I got your back. I'm here to help you. We're not going to just take your money and run away. That in terms of a sales tool, but also as a retention tool. Many of our clients use webinars just to run webinars for their current customers to remind them of the value they're getting as a customer, as just a value add. So I think what people are kind of tired of is the traditional, overly hyped salesy webinar. But I love when the market is like that because it's so easy to stand out. The bar is so low. It's if you just do something as simple as say, you know, in the beginning of your webinar, hey guys, thanks for the webinar. This is what we're going to be doing today. Here's the workshop. By the way, at the end of the webinar, I'm going to offer you my course or my program or my show you my latest product. If you're interested in buying, we got a great offer for you today. If not, go put your wallet in the freezer right now. You don't have to buy anything, whatever. And it's a joke and people laugh, but it's refreshing because no one ever does that because everybody's kind of got their guard up and waiting to get hoodwinked and switch into a sale. But just being transparent and honest, it's really refreshing for the audience. And to sum up, it's really just about how do you deliver the webinar in a way that stands out, rather than just saying the medium itself stinks. There's bad movies and there's great movies. There's bad songs and there's good songs. So
And they haven't
like
stopped writing songs, right? And they're
exactly,
basically all the same. If you really broke it down, it's basically I got dumped. I'm planning to dump her or him or something or the love of my life. I mean, it's one of three or four themes,
yeah,
and yet we don't stop making songs. Wow. Well, it's interesting. So one of the things that I know when I've had this conversation with some owners who are trying to lean into doing things with webinars, and they say, okay, I accept the premise. I need to present something that's useful. It's a way to talk to a bigger audience, especially this season now that trade shows weren't effective, and they haven't been effective
yeah.
for a long time, but they weren't available even. Are there some best, in your experience, are there some best insights in terms of like, don't make them too long? A half hour is better than an hour. Or I know with your platform, you could record a webinar. Is that as effective as a live webinar?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts like that? Just quick tips for somebody listening and saying, okay, this sounds interesting, but how would what are some things to separate us from the myths that people are talking about webinars and the facts?
Sure. So the bottom line is that your goal of the webinar is to build trust with your audience. What does this mean? It means that I'm trying to show people, hey, I have your best interest in mind here. I'm trying to help you in some way, even if it's through my product. Like I have something that is actually going to help you if you pay me, right? As long as you communicate that you're actually, interested in having a relationship with somebody, a long-term relationship with somebody, that's your goal here. A lot of people are worried about all the tactics and the strategies and what do I say and how do I close and all that kind of stuff. The bottom line is that don't break trust. If you feel like you're going to do something that doesn't feel so right and might break the trust, like, saying one thing and then like promising somebody on the title of the webinar, hey, you're going to learn how to become, an all-star basketball player. And then on the webinar, you sell in the program and you don't teach that. I'd rather somebody do a webinar, say, hey, I'm going to show you how to increase your free throw shooting by 10%, show some really good skills and really good drills that they can do, get value from it. Awesome. The thing that people have to understand is that a webinar is really an audition for you. So if the audience is watching that and they say, hey, I just learned some great techniques to improve my free throw shooting. I gave my time, I gave my email address, and they gave me value. There's a good chance that if I give my money, they're going to give value. So it's a chance for a trial run for them to be like, okay, this person's legit. And even if they don't buy at that moment on the webinar or that week, they're not going to go shopping around. You become the expert or the industry expert that they're looking for in this area. And we have a lot of customers that sell physical products, large corporations. Like, for example, we have somebody who is one of the largest gelatin creators in Europe, and he sells his formula of gelatin to large kitchens and chain restaurants around Europe, right? And he runs webinars so that he can build relationships with them, tell them basically what the difference between his gelatin and other gelatins. But at the end of the day, it's an educational platform. And so I'm going to get into the automated and the live in a moment, but I think it's important to just talk a little bit about the content and your intentions when you're coming into this. When it comes to actually presenting your product, I actually recommend as just an exercise is to watch something that's been around for years, and that's the Home Shopping Network. Watch QVC, watch a Home Shopping Network, watch how they present the product, how they take questions, how they do that. And they actually do this all in like 10 minutes per product. So it's actually a very casual, easygoing way to present something. So basically, if you have an e-commerce store, you're selling physical products, by writing a webinar, you're building your own QVC where you have your own audience, where you can sell your own products, your own platform. In terms of live, automated, all that kind of stuff, at WebinarNinja, we offer both because we really believe one of the best ways to get the right people in the room. When I run a live webinar, I want to have the right people in front of me. I don't want tire kickers. I don't want people that are not interested or not educated. They don't know if this is going to be right for them. I want them to come to me like, I want this. Tell me more. Right? So before I get them on a live webinar, I run automated webinars specifically to certain groups. So I run an automated webinar so that I attract the right client. So how do I know who's the right client? Well, I actually define it. I say, I want these people. They have these characteristics and they have these problems. And I want to solve them. So I actually create webinars based on those problems. So for example, I run a webinar on people that are looking to use webinars to grow their email list, to be able to get more clients. So I will create a webinar, an automated webinar, about 30 minutes or so, just talking about how to grow your email list to 1,000 a month with automated webinars. And they'll watch this webinar and they'll say, okay, it'll be educational. And then the call to action at the end, I don't sell them my product or service. I just say, hey, thanks for attending the webinar. If you want to learn more about our product and how to implement what I just taught you with our software, with our tool, we got a live webinar next week. Sign up here. So that when they're coming to the webinar, they're coming as a buyer. They're not going to sign up and say, I'm still trying to figure out what webinars are good for me, right? So this is a good way to get qualified clients right on the webinar. So even if my live webinar only has 30, 40, 50 attendees, these are all buyers. So my conversion rate is much higher because I basically just have to answer a few rebuttal questions, show my product, build a relationship with them, and then make an offer. And even if they don't buy in that moment, through my follow-up emails, through other webinars, they come over. So it's that's the system I build.
So your recorded webinars can be very content rich on a very specific niche issue, right? So you can right away.
Exactly.
And the exchange is for their time, they learn something.
Yeah.
And then you say, if you want to learn more about how to do it, the live webinar might be more, you can be more explicit about, I'm going to talk about my platform or my solution, how we can help you. You can be more direct. because they actually want that. At that point, they actually say, yeah, I want to know how to implement this.
Right.
That's a really good one. Yeah.
So they're on the live webinar, and I actually word the live webinar as a demo. Like, here's a demo of the product, so that so they're coming in understanding, I'm going in for a test drive. No one goes for a test drive for a car if they're trying to waste time. I don't go for a test drive. I got 30 minutes spare before my movie, I'm going to go for a test drive. No, I'm going because it's scheduled, and that's how I kind of see it. And that's what we kind of encourage our users to do. One other thing that you pointed out is the idea of like, the transition from, I just taught you something, let me show you how to implement it with my product. The bottom line is that what I teach them, they can do with any product, right? But what I'm trying to say to them is, hey, if you want to take what I've learned and you want to implement it with far greater ease, I have this thing that can help you out, right? Most people don't want to have to spend too much time to get to their goal. And their goal is like, hey, I want this result. So if I show them a piece of information, like, okay, I'm sold, I love this technique, and you already kind of showed me how to do it a little bit with your software, I just want to go ahead. Think about anything else in your life. Imagine you had a golf coach and they're like, here, I'm going to show you your putting skills, how to do this. This is how you get better on the green. And then at the end, it said, hey, these are the clubs I use when I putt, right? Would you like to buy these? Most people are like, yeah, because I already saw results with this product.
Right.
So let me do the same. So it's a very easy, seamless way. And I don't have to feel like, a used car salesman.
Right. Because otherwise you end up putting the burden on the one webinar to do the attracting thing, which is, okay, I'm going to show you a skill and then I'm going to pivot you somewhere in the middle of that webinar to the sales pitch. And these days, you get on these webinars and right away, oh, here it comes, here it drops. And the trust, which you said at the beginning, this is such a medium where you could build trust. You actually end up losing trust when you do it that way. So that's really brilliant, and I really appreciate that, Omar. And I appreciate you taking this much time for our audience to share on these, both your personal journey and on some key principles that I think are so useful for anyone who's doing any kind of marketing online. Webinars is an essential part of your tool set. If somebody wanted to know more, Omar, about you and about your company, where should they go?
You can check us out at WebinarNinja.com. We have a free course they can check out if you're interested in getting started with webinars at WebinarNinja.com/course. It's a 7-part video course. And if you're on the site, you can always check out our latest live webinar or recorded webinar. We have a whole bunch of stuff that you can just check out, great resources, guides, things like that. I'm not big on social. Actually, I spend most of my time with my team and with my actual customers running webinars. But the one platform I think I'm most active on is Twitter, and my handle is the Omar Zenhom.
Okay. We'll get that in the show notes, and thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jose. I appreciate it.